VR becomes her. I wonder if a warning truly even matters anymore, after everything has already come to its resolution. I didn't listen, as so many of my peers. When the urban eagles, as they like to call themselves, started protesting in front of all the Fortune 500 companies and investment firms in our major metropolitan cities, did I heed their warning, or did I just scoff at my TV like the rest of my schoolmates, boiling down their major gripes into one simple soundbite fed to us through our benevolent media? Out of all the sensible talking points they outlined in their picket lines, all we really got out of it was, "Don't wear the goggles, or you'll never take them off." It was laughable. We all saw the memes where people with oversized VR goggles on their heads were reading satanic symbols and propaganda slogans from eye charts at the doctor's office. Everyone took that slogan, which was slapped across many a picket sign and oversized flag, as something literal. And it was so easy to pass them off when it conjured something so silly and descriptive in the mind's eye, as if the VR goggles would literally clamp down over the back of the head like metal spider legs, never to relax its grip. I, on the other hand, took the advice of the urban eagles as something more metaphorical and spiritual. Sure, I could agree with them that the VR goggles would certainly be a slippery slope where most people would no longer see it necessary to meet each other face to face. Why put on clothes when it can be all done in the virtual space? And why risk making mistakes on your first couple surgeries for those practicing medicine? You don't need cadavers or test patients anymore, not when you can operate a virtual surgical knife. I'd already seen how quickly people's attention spans and social skills had degraded with the onset of the smartphone. Wouldn't virtual reality have an even more dramatic effect? Especially now that every company, business, school, university, and nonprofit were utilizing VR for training purposes? Now, anyone graduating from high school, I being one of the most recent, is required to don the VR goggles during a trial period, working with one of the most sophisticated algorithms in the world to pair you with your future career. And the goggles are there for you to practice this new task in the virtual realm, in essence, testing the success rate of the algorithm to determine if you are in fact fit for the job, and allowing you to try, explore, and fail within the limits of the job as long as possible during an indiscriminate period that could last up to a year after graduation. Honestly, with everything that I'd heard from the urban eagles, and from what I understood about the dangers of becoming too comfortable in the snares of new technology, I had seen how many of my friends and family were thriving in their new roles as lawyers, bankers, teachers, and the list goes on and on. And the success rate was there, as these were interests my peers already had, and the algorithm was able to pick up on that and choose the perfect simulation for them to play in. And it is like playing, at least that's how it had been described to me. Virtual reality had always been a means of escape and fun for our culture, and as the urban eagles picked up their signs and left society altogether to form homesteading communities in tight-knit circles outside in the reservations set aside for them by the state, we all allowed our future careers to be gamified, and I was one of the first in line. The urban eagles had warned us all that the free goggles provided to us by our schools were one of the loudest warning signs. "If something is free, you're the product," they would chant in the streets. But I accepted the gift of those simple plastic goggles, resembling the blinders a snowboarder might wear, and I took them home to strap across my face in my bedroom, to complete my assigned homework for the night, and to log my 2 hours for my new job. Most of my friends had logged 100 hours or more, and they were still perfectly able-bodied, enough to know the virtual from the reality, and all of them had been more than able to remove the glasses from their eyes at the end of each session. So I strapped on my goggles for the first time there in my bedroom, and I learned there in the virtual waiting room of white light what my assignment was. I'd always wanted to be a writer, contributing a new insight never expressed, or proclaiming my own manifesto/warning like the urban eagles. But I, an 18-year-old woman who had never taken a trade class or applied for a team sport in all of my days at school, was assigned to the job of inspecting and condemning houses. This was quite a blow to my constitution and sensibilities. I had never pictured myself doing physical labor, or anything so mindless and repetitive. I didn't even see why this sort of job would ever need to be programmed, as all I did in my virtual realm for 4-hour bursts after school was walk up to houses in an unexplained abandoned neighborhood with no context and spray paint the doors with either a red X to signify that the house was condemned or a red 0 to show that the house was still being inspected. And part of the job didn't even involve me entering these houses. The written instruction booklet I carried along with me in my digital hands forbade me from ever entering the houses. Isn't that what house inspectors did? They entered houses to see if the home was suitable for living or not. But no, this very useful skill was not part of my initial training. Perhaps it would be after I leveled up. But the booklet outlined to me by address which house would be marked with a red X or 0. All I did, or would ever have to do, is walk to the house, pick it out from the booklet, and spray paint the required symbol across the door, over and over again. And there was no explanation as to why there was never anyone else there in the neighborhood streets with me. There were no signs of catastrophe, no flooding or forest fires or bug infestations. It was simply an empty suburb, identical to my own, and all the houses looked pristine. There didn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to tell me why one house would be unsafe compared to its neighbor. And I still went to school every day, trying to find fulfillment in my writing classes and telling no one of my extracurricular experiences. While others recited their very real storylines of arresting felons and rescuing people from flaming buildings in their virtual reality narratives, I was busy spraying doors, like a logger in a forest. And I couldn't help but wonder what the urban eagles were doing at that moment in their perfect convents, far outside the city limits. Still, I was willing to stick it out and log my hours, with no reassurance from anyone living and breathing that my time in this simulated internship would soon be over. I soldiered on and fulfilled my duties as they were outlined in my guidebook, adamant with the fact that it could always be worse, and I might have been assigned cleaning up sewers somewhere. At least I got to walk around and exercise my virtual legs in the sun, and it was always a bright and sunny day. So real that I could feel my bare arms and legs tanning as I crossed from porch to porch. I even made a game of it, guessing before each turn of the page in my book which house would be condemned. And I had a 50-50 chance, of course. More often I was right. A lot more houses were condemnable in this neighborhood. Then came the day that I crossed a familiar busy main street in my town, completely void of cars or pedestrians, and ventured into my own neighborhood. I toured through my old haunts with the most unpleasant, uneasy feeling prickling my neck and scalp, and I didn't think it was physical discomfort from the goggles. I walked past my elementary school with its motionless tetherballs on chains, proceeding to the grocery store, and I had never seen the parking lot so empty. Not even a breeze had been programmed into my scene to trace the clouds across the sky or stir the bits of trash in the gutters. It was as if I was frozen in time, just me, my uniform, a notebook, and a spray can. As instructed by the book, I began to tag the houses. Some of them my neighbors and old friends from middle school I hadn't kept up with in years. I began to notice that the houses I was marking with the X were more often than not those of my classmates, who were all undergoing the VR training program like me. I marked them all as condemned. And then I was there at my own house, and I almost wanted to stop there, forego the time restraints and rip the goggles off my face, never to wear them again, and ready to skip town and join the eagles in their anarchist sex in God's green earth, as we were meant to be. But I flipped the page in the notebook and saw that my door was to be inscribed with that fateful X. I'd like to tell you that this was all I had to see, and that I did exactly as I threatened previously, throwing away my future career with those free gaming goggles. But I walked up the front steps of my front porch and marked my door like all the rest, satisfying my slotted time for the day and allowing me to free my eyes and go to bed. But I never did fall asleep that night, and I couldn't help but wonder how free the code of this program was. What was to stop me from walking through the front door of my own virtual house? Would it be locked? Would the game time out with a massive game over scrolling across my vision? Or would I open that door and see just zeros and ones, empty program space? I had to know. So at close to midnight on that school day, I sat up on the corner of my bed and strapped the goggles across my face once again. I entered my neighborhood scene, but now at night, as I would expect to find right outside my own physical window. And the street lights were buzzing above my head. The porch light on my house was on, as my mom always left it, and there was the sloppy and dripping red X that I had marked it with. With my heart thumping in my throat, either in my virtual one or my physical, I can't say which, I cautiously approached my front porch and tried the door. It was locked, again, thanks to my mom's diligence. But I was quick to drop the paint can/notebook from my other hand and reach into my back pocket of my work shorts. There was my wallet, and in it I found the spare key to my front door, exactly in the secret pocket where I had always stashed it. I inserted the key and pushed open the door. I held my breath, expecting the worst, but I only saw my ordinary living room, which I had always taken for granted. Every time I came home after school, there was the half-finished puzzle on the coffee table that my brother had started the afternoon before, and there was the glass of water I had left by the sink. Now, feeling like a dreamer outside of her body, I crept up the stairs, which made all the right creaks and all the right spots, and I wondered if I should be careful or else risk waking my parents in the nearest bedroom at the top of the stairs. But I passed that off as silly. This was a video game. So I charged the rest of the way down the hall and pushed open my bedroom. There I was, sitting on the edge of the bed with my head bowed slightly, staring into nothing with a twitching lower lip, and hands resting palms down on my pajama legs. It was such a strange feeling to look at myself like that, so I snapped out of it and tried to remove the VR goggles from my head with my physical hands. But all I could do was move my digital hands, and I touched my naked head of hair, where there was no restraining strap to be found. I began to panic, closing my eyes to snuff out that virtual space as best I could, willing for my mind to return to my physical body, sitting there in the bed with my hands in my lap. But I couldn't conjure that real scene, no matter how hard I tried, and I ran to the bed, shaking my physical self and grappling with the goggles across her face. She lolled onto the bed like a broken doll, and I had to help her lay down as I struggled with the strap across the back of her head. But the clasp was locked, or stuck, as I had never encountered before. I started to scream then, calling for my mom, dad, and my brother, but no one came to the doorway, no matter how high I raised my volume. I was about to give up and run to my brother's room next door when light suddenly filled my shaded window from the other side, and I opened the blinds to see a vehicle was snailing into my cul-de-sac from the adjoining road, as big as a street sweeper and just as slow. But its bright headlights on the front of its chassis shot crazy jagged shadows across my neighborhood, as bright as a train spotlight, and eerily white as the waiting room in the VR space when I was first assigned my job. And this vehicle was not driving along the street, but along the sidewalk, seemingly passing through the fire hydrants and recycle bins on the curb as if it wasn't actually there at all. And I could hear it now, a rattling, clunking, wheezing sound that was accentuated by hissing pistons and releases of air. I couldn't make out any identifiable markings on the vehicle as it shambled closer due to its invasive spotlight. And it paused at each house before trolling on. And I knew why. I had marked all of my immediate neighbors' houses in the cul-de-sac with zeros, which meant their homes were safe for now. Only mine had the X, and as soon as the vehicle was in front of my driveway, I could see that there were no markings on its sleek silver body, and there were no windows or windshield, only that adjustable spotlight, which swung around to blind me and fill my window once again. I ducked down and the light disappeared, but the clunking, hissing, chortling intensified, and I peeked over the sill to watch the vehicle, its light extinguished, turn like a swivel chair to face my front door. Its chrome cowcatcher was now directed at the front porch like the tip of a spear, and it began to creep forward onto the front lawn and up to my mother's well-manicured garden path. It didn't move on tires but what looked like a million centipede legs, leaving a trail of dead grass behind it. I watched as a trunk door opened in the back and someone stepped out. I seized with surprise to see that it was an exact copy of me, but not the me in my work uniform, but the me in my red plaid pajama pants and mussed-up hair. That version of me stood by the mailbox, patiently waiting with a dead expression as the armored vehicle crept up the porch. And from the unmistakable creaking I could hear on the stairs directly outside my room, I knew the thing had passed through the front door without opening it and was closing in quickly. Although I understand everything now, I didn't fully perceive the true motives of that machine in that moment, and I only thought about gathering up my body in that split second between the loudest crack on the top stair and the first eye contact I made with the waiting double outside my house, and I saw that she was smiling. I wish I had gathered up my sleeping self in my arms to take with me. But in that fight or flight moment, all I could think to do was run into my closet, push up the attic door in the ceiling, and claw my way up into the asbestos-laden crawlspace. I listened to the thing as it bumped into my room below me, a mechanical muttering and chortling all too clear now, as it either recited its inner monologue or responded to some far-off instructions. I heard it pause considering, air hissing, before its little legs were clattering again, and I heard the bed creak as it no doubt interacted with it. What it did with my body, I cannot say, and whatever it did, it was not enough to unplug me from the virtual reality I had found myself in, and I did not wait to learn how it would make its escape or listen to hear if the imposter outside would then come into my room and sleep in my bed, pretending to be me. I crawled to the other side of the attic, pushed through the vent cover in the back, and scaled the roof so that I could jump down into my backyard. I didn't look over my shoulder or try to alert anyone I thought might be alive in my childhood home. I ran and ran until I was well outside of the city, without ever stopping for a bite to eat or a drink of water, and never tiring, as those limitations no longer affected me there in my body, whose skin would never burn in the sun, and whose breath never failed her lungs. I was even blessed to find one of those urban eagle communes, and I inspected their empty yurts and thumbed through their endless stockpiles of storable foods, guns, and water jugs. But I never found another soul. I'm still waiting for one, but I don't expect to find anyone anytime soon. At least not any eagles. They had been the smart ones and never touched the VR goggles as many of us had done, and they had been so right. Literally, the goggles weren't meant to ever be taken off. No, the eagles weren't programmed to be in this world with me. I can only hope that someone had bucked the system just enough like I had, and maybe peered through their dark glasses outside of their normal work hours, at midnight or later, when the chrome creature went to collect its condemned souls. I can only hope that person had made their escape like me, free from their goggles and free from their physical body, and I can only hope they'll come looking for their slice of paradise out here in the woods, as the urban eagles had promised. Perhaps not to find full protection in the form of prepped stockpiles, but another lost soul to wait out eternity with, while the great underground servers and processors are still pumping out enough power for this realm to render as realistic pixels in front of my quote-unquote eyes. And still I wait, and even though I do not sleep, I dream.